Hi everyone, it's 2 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started with this week's webinar. We really appreciate you logging in and joining us this afternoon for our For Sale by Owner and Expired Listings webinar, which will be taught by Scott Monahan, the Career Development Coach for the Princeton School of Real Estate. I am going to go ahead and mute this call just to make sure that we eliminate any background noise. So hold on just one moment as I mute.
All participants are muted, but may unmute themselves. All participants are muted and may not unmute themselves.
Okay, so we are all muted. Again, we will pause for questions at the end. So if you have any questions along the way, just hold them till the end and we'll make sure to ask them. And here is Scott Monahan, and we will get started with our webinar today.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. As Courtney said, our topic today is listing for sale by owner houses and listing expired listings, relisting expired listings. I'm Scott Monahan. I'm Career Development Coach for Princeton School of Real Estate. The reason I'm so excited about this particular session is that the dialogues and information that I'm going to impart today, I have used personally to list 125 houses a year. Now that's 125 for sale by owner houses. And if you were to master the 10 questions that'll be included in this session, that was good for 10 appointments out of every 14 calls for me at the time that I was doing it. So on that basis, I really think that there's something worthwhile here for everybody who is participating. I would also like to put a plug in for the Friday Princeton School modules that we are doing. And this Friday will be a more detailed look at the same topic, for sale by owners and expired listings, and objection handling for people who have either previously listed or are selling on their own. So there'll be a lot of material that will be imparted on Friday. So let's talk about listing for sale by owners for starters. I think that if you are going to set forth a campaign to start to increase your listing inventory, which is a very lucrative thing to do, it requires a very disciplined approach. And the reason that I say that is that there are two things that are absolutely necessary. One is consistency, and the second is sales skills. Now, the reason that I point that out is that we've spent a lot of time in the past talking about sphere of influence. And if you recall from some of our previous conversations, we even broke sphere of influence down to those people who you are very close with and those people who are your acquaintances. The difference between a for sale by owner campaign or an expired listing campaign is that they really do not qualify as your sphere of influence. They're not people that you know, that you have an affiliation with, or that you have any kind of a connection with. So the difference being is that when we talk about your marketing to your sphere of influence, effectively what we're saying is that you need to be in the flow, or you're utilizing in a big way your people skills. When you are dealing with a for sale by owner who is in effect saying, I don't need you, I can do it on my own, or an expired listing that has had a negative experience with another real estate company, there you are going to be required to use not only your people skills, but you'll have to use some selling skills. So the difference is that this is a little bit more sophisticated, which is why those people who have some experience in the real estate business will, in some cases, gravitate to doing expired listings and for sale by owners. And the novice generally give an inconsistent approach to it and then drop out very, very quickly. So let's talk about for sale by owners and expired listings from the standpoint of where we find them. The sources for sale by owners are obviously varied. It could be as much as the bulletin board at the local grocery store, But principally, I'm going to refine this to online advertising, which could be in a local newspaper or weekly newspaper, and it could even be signs where a for sale by owner puts a sign out that their house is for sale. Now, I'll speak to the online briefly, and the online, an example of that would be, for instance, forsalebuyowner.com. We find that that one is probably particularly interesting to look at. There are others that are fizbo.com. That's not one that we're necessarily recommending. Additionally, it could be Zillow.com. Any source that a for sale by owner individual could use to promote their property. Now, what I'd like you to consider, though, is that with regards to the for sale by owners and the sources, the online sources are generally advertising venues. So, for instance, forsalebuyowner.com is not a licensed real estate broker. So therefore, they are not listing properties in the same fashion that we would be listing properties as an exclusive right to sell listing or an exclusive agency listing. However, there are agents that are affiliated with companies like forsalebuyowner.com, and they then list the properties via referrals that they may get from forsalebuyowner.com, and they may have a reduced commission arrangement or something to that effect. So my point is that before you engage in calling a for sale by owner, if you found it via an online source, the best thing to do would be to look online, or excuse me, to look on the multiple listing service to see whether or not that property has been listed by a licensed real estate agent in your market area. So just because it shows up on forsalebuyowner.com or one of the other variations of those websites does not mean that another realtor has not listed the property. So we want to double check so that we're not going after properties listed by another agent. Now, with respect to the expired listings, principally the best source for expired listings would be the multiple listing service. Now, the next thing that I'm going to point out to you is the dedication required to doing an expired listing approach to marketing yourself and getting inventory, and that is that there will be significant experienced agents that will make a living on expired listings. So my recommendation to you is that if that is the campaign that you wish to pursue, which I wholeheartedly recommend, it must be immediate, that you follow up with the expired listing, and practically as early as possible for you to make the call without being offensive to a seller. You would be amazed that the day that a listing expires, between 8 in the morning and 9:30, 10 o'clock, 3 or 4 agents may have already contacted the potential seller. I question the message that a lot of those agents use, and that's why I endorsed what I said about the content of this webinar, because our approach may be significantly different than what some of the other agents are using. Now, as a prerequisite to this, let's talk about the do not call lists. And what I want to say to you is that whether somebody is a for sale by owner or they are an expired listing, there are no exceptions that pertain to the do not call list. So if the individual is on the do not call list, then they're on the do not call list. Now, that does not stop us from going and seeing the individuals at their home in person, because obviously that's not a phone call. I would say that with regards to expireds and the do not call list, there does seem to be some sort of an expectation on the part of sellers that when their property expires, they are somewhat anticipating those phone calls. So I'm suggesting to you that we have not seen a lot of pushback on that, but if somebody were to object to it, then obviously you would need to adhere to that. With regards to the for sale by owners and the do not call list, the position that I would take, and particularly based on the methodology that we're going to use to talk to the for sale by owner seller, is that if they are advertising, then they are, for all practical purposes, inviting the call. The difference being is that they might argue that they are not inviting the call to have real estate agents inquire as to whether or not they are listing. You'll find that our approach is different, and we will not be asking that question when we make the phone call. Now, this is probably one of the most important statements that I can make to you as it relates to the specific method that we're going to use in doing the for sale by owner call. And that is that the reason that you are calling, whether it be a for sale by owner or an expired listing, using the dialogue that I'm going to give you momentarily, is to see if the seller would cooperate with you if you had a buyer. The reason that I say that is that we are not calling to list the property. And I'll explain that a little bit further. The other thing that I might mention to you, though, is that if you were to call either a for sale by owner or an expired listing and inquire as to whether they would cooperate with you if you had a buyer, you could take the position internally that if you had a buyer, then that would be exactly what you were asking. By the same token, there's nothing that says that you could not be a potential buyer if you went to the house and fell in love with it yourself. I'm not suggesting that you purport yourself to be a buyer when you're not, but nonetheless, it's entirely possible that if you went to look at something and it was a spectacular offering, that you could conceivably be a buyer yourself. Now, I want to take this one more step before we get into the actual dialogue that I'm going to give you. And that is that you are not calling to list. The phone is only a tool that we're going to use to get an appointment to preview the property. If in your mind you are thinking that you are calling to ultimately list the house, then you will fail. And the reason is you will be saying things that the seller will interpret as listing dialogue. The reason that I say that is this, that if I called a seller and I said, "Hi, I'm Scott Monahan from Wydell Realtors, and I was inquiring whether the house is still for sale, and I just wanted to know whether you'd cooperate with us if we had a buyer." Now, let's say that the seller says, "Well, if you had a buyer, I would certainly cooperate with you, but I will not list the house." Now, on that basis, I would want to go see the house. I know all of you are thinking, well, ultimately we'd like to list the house, but it's one step at a time. And the reason that I say that is that if I walk through the house, and in my career I've had this happen numerous times, obviously not every day, but I have walked into a home and I knew that I had the right buyer for that house. I just knew it. And in that circumstance, if the seller were to say to me, "I will gladly pay a commission," I will actually put it in writing that I will pay a commission, but I'm not willing to list the house with you for you to put in the multiple listing service. My point is that if I had the buyer and I knew they would pay a commission, would I ever care if I listed the house? The answer to that is obviously not. Now, what are the odds that I may have a buyer ready, willing, and able? Probably slim to none. It's only happened to me several times in my career. But nonetheless, it's a possibility, and that is the basis by which we are going forward with this. So next, let's talk about scheduling appointments. And what I'm going to suggest to you is that there are three objectives. There are three objectives to the dialogue that we're going to use for scheduling an appointment. Now, this would be the same for a for sale by owner as it would be for an expired listing. The first objective is rapport development. Obviously, excuse me. Obviously, you need to be a friendly voice on the other end of the phone, not argumentative, and so very, very quickly they will make a determination whether they like the way you sound and whether or not you're somebody that they would continue to talk to. The second is data collection. So if I were to ask them, is their home still for sale? That's obviously data collection. They may tell me what the price is. They may tell me some other things. And that's all important information. They may tell me what their motivation is in selling. And then the third objective is to schedule an appointment. I want you to underline scheduling the appointment. The only thing that this call is good for is for you to schedule an appointment to preview the property. So, let's talk about the dialogue and exactly how you might want to go through that. Now, I've broken it down into three sections: an introduction, closing for the appointment, and the purpose for the call. Let's walk through this slowly. Now, this would be as a for sale by owner. I will tell you that if you were to master the 10 sentences that I have on this page, you will get more appointments than you can ever realize. So the first is that when I make the phone call and they answer, I'm going to say, are you the folks selling the home? Now, some of you may not see yourselves as folks kind of people. It sounds kind of colloquial. It sounds a little bit Pennsylvania Dutch perhaps, but that would be my fault. I happen to find it very, very comfortable to say, are you the folks selling the house? And they will tell you yes, or they took it off the market or whatever. Presuming that they told you that yes, the house is still for sale, I very, very quickly want to identify myself. And I'm going to say, hi, my name is Scott Monahan from Wydell Realtors. May I ask who I'm speaking to? Now, the notion behind this is that if I give something of myself, meaning my name, it's very appropriate then for me to ask who I'm speaking to. I will tell you that in no case did I ever look up anybody's name before I made the phone call. And the reason for that is it doesn't matter if I know who they are by having looked it up. If they're unwilling to tell me, then obviously I have no rapport, and it doesn't matter whether I know. Now, I'm going to caution you right now that somebody may take a defensive position right off the bat. As soon as you've identified yourself as a real estate agent with your company, they may say, we're not listing the house. Now, I want to just take you back to the comment that I made a little bit earlier. Our objective is not to list the house. Our objective was only to find out whether they would let us take a look to see if we have a buyer. So where I said that if you think of yourself as listing the house, you will fail. And this is exactly where you will fail, because when I say, hi, I'm Scott Monahan, and they say, we're not listing, if you think that the purpose of the call was for you to list the house, you'll say, oh, okay, I'm sorry, thank you very much, and you'll hang up. Whereas in my situation, and this is the most important part of this, is that I just go on to the next question. So I'll show you again. If I said, hi, are you the folks selling the house? Yes, I am. My name is Scott Monahan with Wydell Realtors. May I ask who I'm speaking to? And they say, well, no, not really, because we're not interested in listing the house. Now notice what I'm going to do next. Well, that's okay. I didn't call you to list the house. I just wanted to ask if you could tell me where the house is located. And at that point, they may tell you where the house is located, or they may say, well, what's it matter to you? Now, I'm being extremely hard about that one. And the reason that I'm doing that is to demonstrate a point. All I'm going to do next is, even if they won't give me the address, I'm going to ask them, may I ask you a question? Now, in sales, there's a technique about this, and what it's called is answering a question with another question. Some people have called it a porcupine in the past. So no matter what, in the introduction, if they were willing to give me the information, I just went on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and went through the questions. If they chose not to give me the information, such as where the property was located, and they became, rather direct about the fact that they're not interested in listing, it doesn't matter. I just go to the next question. For those of you who will be taking the program on Friday, and you'll get a chance to work with this, you'll find it's very liberating to be able to just go on to the next question without having to think about an answer. So let's go to the next section, which is closing for the preview appointment. So remember what I said. Even if they didn't give me the answer that I was looking for, I said, may I ask you a quick question? And then I said, would you cooperate with us? Now, I will share with you that this is intentionally vague. When I say, would you cooperate with us, they may say, well, what do you mean? And notice the beauty of this. I'm going to just go right to the next question. I'm going to say, well, if I actually had a buyer, would you pay a fee? Now, I will tell you that they would say, perhaps yes, or they may even say, how much is your fee? Now, I know that we're not taking feedback on this call during my presentation, but I would ask you this. If somebody says, well, how much is your fee? Does that indicate that they may be interested? In either case, I don't want to discuss the fee over the telephone, and that's why I go on to the next question, which is so beautifully written because one flows into the next, and all I have to say is, well, I never met a seller who would take less than what they wanted. Would you agree with that? That's the tie down. I never met a seller who would take less than what they wanted. Now let me be clear about this. They may take less than what they're asking, but what they want is what they need, and they can't take less than what they want, even if it's just to get out of the property and pay off the mortgage. So I'll repeat it again. I never met a seller who would take less than what they wanted. Would you agree with that? Well, I guess so. So if I could get you what you wanted settlement, could we cooperate on that basis? Well, okay. What do they have to lose? Do you see how one thing just led to the next, to the next, to the next? Now, I will tell you this. If you had somebody who said, well, I don't really want to tell you where the house is located, and we're not interested in listing, and as I indicated previously, I said I would just go right to the next question, ask them whether they would cooperate with us. If I actually had a buyer, would you pay a fee? And then I never met a seller who would take less than what they wanted, so if they could get what they wanted at settlement, could we work together on that basis? And they go, well, okay. Then watch this. The next section, the purpose of the call. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, all I really wanted to do was take a quick look to see if I have a buyer. That's all. So remember, I said that I'm not calling to list. I believe that. If somebody said to me, I'll cooperate with you, but I'll only pay you $1 in total commission, I can tell you from my point of view, I would go on the appointment. So all I want to do is take a quick look at your home to see if I have a buyer. I promise I won't wear out my welcome. Now you can modify this if you want. I would say I'll be in and out like a flash. I'll only be there as long as it takes to look at the house. Would that be okay with you? And they go, well, okay. And then they provide me with an appointment. Now I'm just going to share something funny with you, and that is that there are numerous times when I have used this dialogue and somebody has initially refused to tell me where the house is located, and I just went through the dialogue exactly as I did with you, and at the end they said, well, okay, you can walk through on that basis. And then I've had to say to them, well, would you mind telling me where the property is located? And they go, well, okay. And at that time, they give me the rest of the data collection that I needed in the first section. So if I said, so can you tell me where I'm going? And they say, well, yeah, it's 123 Banana Street. And oh, by the way, can I ask who I'm speaking to, please? So even if I didn't get the information in the beginning, I'm going to get it in the end. I hope that helps you with regards to making an easy call with a for sale by owner. I want you to know that I have all the records that I would make less than 14 calls to get 10 appointments with for sale by owners using exactly what I just shared with you. Now I'm going to come back to the expired listings. And the expired listings are so easy. And the reason being is the same is true. They had a failed experience with another real estate agent. And so if I take the position that I'm calling to list my house, it's entirely possible that they don't even want to hear about listing, and they certainly don't know me from Adam, so why would they feel like they have any rapport? So watch what happens, and I'm going to go right through the dialogue from start to finish again. I'm going to say, "Hi, are you the folks selling the house?" And they go, "Well, yes." "My name is Scott Monahan from Wydell Realtors. May I ask who I'm speaking to, please?" Now, I may very well have had it written on the sheet in front of me. And they'll say, "Well, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, Mr. Jones." Now, the next item, which I believe is marked D on the sheet that you have on the screen, I'm going to change that one question. And instead of me saying, "Can you tell me where the house is located?" because obviously if it was an expired listing, I would already know where the house is located. And if in its place I put, "I see that your home has expired in the multiple listing service. May I ask you a question? Is it still for sale?" And the minute that they say yes to that, now I've made the conversion to an expired listing call. And then I'm going to go right into the next section for closing the preview appointment. "Well, let me ask you, would you cooperate with us?" "Well, what do you mean by that?" "Well, if I actually had a buyer, would you pay a fee?" Now they could get arrogant and say, "Well, we had it listed for 6 months. How come we didn't see you?" Well, to be honest with you, I haven't seen your house. But if I could take a look at your house just to see if I have a buyer, I promise I won't wear out my welcome. And I'll be in and out like a flash. Well, okay. And right again, we got an appointment. We have an appointment. So hopefully this made making those horrible phone calls to strangers a little bit more comfortable for you. And I can assure you that if you work through this a couple of times over and bear in mind exactly what I said to you in the beginning of this webinar. So if you have to listen to that again, there are cautionary things that I'm telling you that if you violate, you will not succeed with this. But if you do it the way I've just described, you will have tremendous success. So hopefully that gives you some insight into getting appointments with for sale by owners and expired listings. On Friday, we will dive into the actual walkthrough appointment and then some of the most common objections that you'll experience with regards to a for sale by owner. For instance, "I'd like to think it over." "I can sell it myself." So we will get into some of those answers, and you'll find that they are extremely easy. Anyway, that's what we've got for you. I hope that you got something out of this. I'm going to turn this back over to Courtney Graham, and I wish you a pleasant day. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. We are now going to unmute to allow for any questions, so hold on just one moment.
All participants are unmuted.
So if anyone has any questions regarding the material we just covered, please ask them now. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate you attending and look forward to seeing you on Friday for a continuation of for sale by owner and expired listings. Thank you.